Even though the public acknowledges the importance of water reuse projects, it does not automatically mean that they will be able to support it, or they want to support it. There are many factors that influence the way people view the reuse process or schemes. So in this lecture, or in this video, we are going to discuss the various factors influencing people's acceptance on water reuse. So this one is the first one, and I think this is the main one for most of the one of the biggest factors why people are adamant or are not very accepting of recycled or reused water is the disgust or yuck factor. So this is basically just an emotional response which is triggered by our thinking of an object that has already touched something dirty. For example, when we think that the water, the wastewater, is something like this, and then it is changed to something like this here as a clear water. Still, even though it looks clear already, but we already realize that it came from this kind of water, or it came from your toilet, for example. So that thinking, it triggers something in our psychological mind. So it's basically, we think that anything that has touched already something unpleasant has been contaminated or is or contagious in a way, and so we don't really believe that the quality is good because of that disgusted fact or disgust feeling about it. So it's you are always thinking about an image of a raw sewage even though it's already clean. So one way to probably overcome this kind of thinking or this kind of feeling is to possibly change the way you present the water. So there's a study about this that people don't like to really use recycled water, and instead repurified is a better term, because when you say recycled, it has been used already and you're just recycling it. But the word repurified means it's already pure in the first instance, and then it's just repurification. So it's a better term. It's just a terminology. So it's just about branding in order to address this image of, or this response, emotional response of disgust or yuck factor. So basically, another example is in Singapore. They are using an indirect potable reuse there, and in their system, they name their water, the reused water, as new water. So there's no anything that says there that it is actually from wastewater. So it's a new water, but it's basically the same as this one, these two, but it's a better branding. So people are more accepting in this one because they're now trying to forget that image is not triggering anything of an image that is coming from the wastewater. Another factor is on the perceived risk of using reused water. So basically, when we think about the wastewater, we think of a very dirty source of water, and so there should be a lot of bacteria, a lot of contaminants, a lot of pathogens there that could possibly be not 100% taken out of during treatment process. So that's why people do not really believe the 100%, or do not believe the or trust the whole treatment process, for example, and so they still perceive it as a risky new source of water. So public health issues due to contaminants in recycled water is one of the main causes of this perception of risk. And also more vocal about this risk is on from mothers, especially they are thinking of the children. So there are vocal concerns about risk on children, especially in drinking recycled water or reused water. And basically, when one hears about outbreaks due to contaminants in water, like for example cholera, and diarrhea because of drinking some contaminated water, it also triggers this worry, especially for mothers, to think about the possibility of having this contaminant still on the treated water. And also there's another one is the lack of knowledge and uncertainty with regards to long-term effects that actually people fear, because this is a newer source of water and they still prefer those conventional sources of water because they don't want to have regrets in the future and disappointments as well. So there's a lot of uncertainty and there's a lack of knowledge as well about, especially on the treatment process. So if you compare an expert or researcher and an expert and compare it to the general public, so of course the expert from with scientific knowledge will be more they have more assurance of the safety of the water because that's part of their work, and to ensure that the water, the treatment process is producing safe water. But for the general public, they don't have that much idea exactly of how the mechanism works, and if certainly it certainly works as it should be. And there should be a lot of different instances that it could not work. For example, what if there's leakage throughout the system? So that's how people actually think about coming from a very dirty source and making it to something potable. So this is a very big factor of their not fully accepting water reuse. So as I mentioned before, there's a lot of pathogens in water that could have an outbreak. So this definitely adds to the burden of people thinking that it's possible to get some disease coming from water. So the perception of risk is one big issue that needs to be addressed when and it can only be addressed mainly by showing how the process really works, and perhaps getting their trust that the water quality that is coming from the treatment process has as the same quality or even higher quality than the conventional way of treating water. So that is why it is important to know how to effectively communicate the water quality and safety of reused water. So basically, the focus should be more on the quality of the water, not on the degree of treatment. So regardless if it's primary, secondary, advanced secondary, and tertiary treatment process, these kind of terms are not very well understood by common people or the general public. So we need to find a way to communicate what sort of quality are we talking about in terms of the product water or the reused water product. So in this case, the different water qualities, there are different water qualities for different purposes, right? As I mentioned previously, for bathing, for flushing the toilet, for the firefighting, for example, the water used for firefighting, and most especially for drinking. So the drinking purposes, which is for human consumption, should have the really, really high water quality, but the rest of them could be at a lower quality than for drinking. So effectively communicating this quality of the water would help in alleviating the worry and the perception of risk by others, by people, and also it will also possibly alleviate the yuck factor once they know that water, the product water, is a really good quality. Then they may forget about where it is coming from. So one way to do that would probably to use water quality star rating. So this is also a way of branding probably. So we know exactly right now we have a lot of different star rating, and the higher, the more stars there are, it means the better quality is, right, or the better efficiency. So in this case, we have some energy rating with 6-star energy rating, which says that it's a very energy efficient appliance, for example. or a health star rating when we buy some food. For example, some cereals, you can see we always look on the star rating there. So the more stars, the better quality, and in this case, the healthier version. In the same way, we can have a similar thing for water as well, because people would really relate to this kind of branding or this kind of presentation. So let's say a 0-star wastewater would say it's the original domestic sewage. So it's a very poor quality. This is the original source of the wastewater. And then once it goes to more stars, so 1-star effluent is only undergone some screening and is not allowed for discharge to the environment. And we go up here for a 3-star effluent. It means that now all the BODs are removed and possibly this can be discharged to some receiving water. And when you say 4-star, reclaimed water is something that you can now use for non-potable purposes, like in public areas, irrigation of public areas, or for cooling water of industrial processes. And of course, we can see here a 5-star drinking water process quality. So 5-star here is the highest quality for human consumption. So it still contains the necessary minerals and that are needed for our human consumption. But you can see here there's another 6-star. So 6-star is still purer than drinking water. So basically you are removing almost anything inside that water. And mainly these are used for electronics plant, for example, for manufacturing of electronics, because they need a really clean water during the manufacturing processes. So this kind of star system could be a way to try to convince people about the quality of the water, and it is also trying to focus more on the quality rather than the treatment process. So we can rebrand, possibly, as I mentioned in the earlier slides, that branding is also very important. So probably you can say 5-star or 6-star water would be possibly good, or you can say purified recycled water, or as one of the examples I mentioned is in Singapore, they have very innovative there. New water is also very good way to present the reused water. The end use of water, or how the water will be used, the recycled water will be used, is another factor. And this is closely related to the first two factor of the disgust or yuck factor, and also the factor on the perception of risk, because people usually are not so resistant if the end use or the specific use is for outside of the body, like away from the body consumption, from away from human consumption, for example. So for example, for the use in industry, if that reused water or recycled water is used for cleaning the floors of the industry, or is used for cooling water, or is it used for irrigation of the parklands and golf courses, or other areas that are in the public, they are less resistant to that one. But if it is about drinking purposes, for example, something that is near the body, then the resistance it will increase. Except that if it's, for example, the use in toilet flushing should be better accepted. But for agriculture, also people will tend to be more accepting if the watering of the crops that have the livestock crops, or those crops that still need to be washed or need to be peeled, is okay to be used for recycled water, because at least they think that the water will just touch the outside of the crops and the peel will still be removed anyway. But for those crops that have direct human consumption, then this will be met with resistance because of the thinking that it will still touch the water, which they think is psychologically is disgusting for them. And also the resistance for domestic purposes is higher, but if compared to if they have a choice, they are okay if it's used for houses, but for other purposes like in toilet flushing or in watering the plants, or some other areas like the uh, the washing of the cars, but not those areas that would be touching or quite in proximity, is closer proximity to the people, like brushing the teeth or for showering. They are not much accepting on this one. So as I mentioned, this is very closely linked with the disgust factor. That is, the closer the use is to human consumption, the greater public opposition it will face. So just to show an example of how people perceive the different uses of recycled water or reused water, we can see from this figure here, or from this graph, that the highest opposition is actually on food preparation in restaurants, not even on drinking. So this is based on a survey in 2006 or before that by these authors here. And food preparation in restaurants has been garnered the highest votes for resistance in terms of using recycled or reused water in their restaurants. The second one is drinking, which is expected, and so it's not that much difference there. And anything about with regards to relation to food and for consumption are all in the higher part of resistance here. Bathing is also there because it's near body experience. It's a near body use of that water. And if you look at down, then the least one is actually firefighting here, which is understandably because it's not really touching any of our body. So it's just basically to put out fire and road construction and air conditioning as well. So you can see from this survey that in fact people really feel that anything that is far from their body use is okay, but anything that has to do about consumption or has touching the body is a big resistance to its potential use. Another factor for this is the source of water, or what we call as the use history. So where it is coming from for the water for the recycling of that water. Based on a survey, people are more accepting if they know that the water is coming from their own homes, because in this case they are more familiar of exactly what they have been doing in their own homes, and they feel like the source of water, if it's from their own homes, is cleaner compared to, for example, from the neighbors or other places, because they have no really idea what are those people in those places are doing or putting in their wastewater. And also, if compared to the public source, they are less acceptable because of the same reason of the uncertainty of the different sources of this water, or what kind of contaminants have been added to the water due to the activities of the people in that specific place. But there's another survey that says that people are more willing to accept for a public source here if there is a single large treatment plant. So for example, in a community, people were more likely to accept the quality of that reused water if there is a large treatment plant. In comparison, this higher trust for a large treatment plant in comparison to multiple smaller installations within a small community, because of multiple operations, so they are perceiving it as higher risk of failure because of many operations at the same time. But there's single large treatment plant, it means that it's very focused. The people in charge are focused on only one plant, and they feel like it can be trusted more, and it has more perhaps technology, a better technology to handle all their the source of or the water for recycling or reusing. So this is another issue of the source of water to be recycled as a factor to consider for public acceptance. So the issue of choice is pretty much self-explanatory. For example, in locations that is experiencing drought, for example, I think if the government or an institution would possibly propose a water reclamation project or a water treatment plant for potable reuse, they will possibly face far less public opposition. This is because of the need of that time. So if there's no chance or there's no other option of a new option for supply of water, then the wastewater to drinking water would be possibly will be accepted more readily. But of course, it doesn't really mean that because of that situation, people will just say yes to that approach because it happened already. For example, an example of this is in Toowoomba in Queensland in the year in around 2000s, and that part there they really need a water supply for their own community, but because of there was a need for that, there was a need for that water treatment plant, but because of some issues with regards to the trust of the government as well as some opposition activities, then that first proposal for the first ever proposal for Australia about an advanced water treatment plant was scrapped. It did not push through, and people were against it in the plebiscite that they made. So a big no vote was actually won on that plebiscite there. But in any case, for certain locations that, like for example, a location like this with physical water scarcity and even economic water scarcity, then if there's a proposal for a wastewater to drinking water process there, it would be more likely that people will be agreeable to that option. In other case, for example, in communities with a lot of access to water, the choice of having a recycling or a plant, a wastewater treatment plant for potable or even non-potable purposes will possibly still face a lot of questions because they will still feel they don't feel the need of using such process if they still have a lot of other options of the sources of water, like for example desalination source or possibly from groundwater source. Because of they have a lot of options compared to this case here, they are not more willing to accept this kind of proposed or this kind of approach. So even as a future contingency plan or for use with non-potable purposes, it will still face a lot of public resistance because they may ask questions like, "You government will just spend money for something that is not needed." They're saying that probably the risk of that will outweigh the benefits in the future. It's the same thing that happened for desalination plant, for example. We had a drought for the millennium drought in the year 2003, in that year 2000 to 2010. And so at that time, there was really a need for additional water supply, and desalination was one that is the best case for that specific time. And so they built the desalination plant, and then after building the desalination plant, the rain came to Australia, to Sydney specifically. So in that case, the desalination plant was not needed anymore. And so that some people are also questioning about that decision of having that as a security blanket or a security for a future security to Australia of that desalination plant. And indeed, it happened last year that there was a need of that desalination plant, and so maybe that was also a good decision at that time to practically build desalination plant and see, even though it is quite expensive to maintain without any production of water, but then again come a time that there's a need for big supply of water, then the desalination plant is just there anytime, that can be activated anytime. This slide shows a very good example of the effect of the water situation in a particular place at a particular time on the way they think or accept the use of recycled or reused water. So from this graph, we can see from 1996 to 2012, there was a survey was done by both the New South Wales Health Department survey and the Sydney Water also. And they found out that in this time, as you can see, these are the blue ones are the dam levels. So it means at this point in time, the dam levels are quite high. All right, so there's a lot of water still at that point in time. And then the red ones and the green one are actually the surveys on the acceptance of people in using recycled water for drinking. So what you can see from here, at the moment that the dam levels are still high, so it means there are a lot of water supply at that point. So there is a low acceptance in terms of using recycled water for drinking. But you can see from here during the millennium drought, during the early 2000s to around 2010 or 2008, you can see here that the dam levels dip really, really low. Okay, so this one has the drought season. So you can see from here there's a big change in terms of how now people perceive about the use of recycled water into drinking water. So there's a big increase in terms of acceptance because at this point in time, the people are realizing that there are no other choice for them. So they are at a point that they are very, very desperate to have a new water supply, to have new water sources. So that's why you can see a big jump from this one. So once the water goes up again slowly until the present time, so the issue of choice for people again drop down because they don't see the need anymore of that new water source because of now water is widely available again in the dams and also other sources of water. So here, from this survey alone, one can see that there is really an effect of how the water availability is affecting the way people, the willingness of the community to consider water reuse in as an overall situation. The trust in authorities and scientific knowledge is pretty much related to the previous one in terms of the issue of choice because the choice is done if they're more likely to be accepting if they actually trust the authorities that are proposing for that project, for example, or if they trust the knowledge or the technology that is available to produce the safe and quality water if possible. So in this case, basically the trust in authorities is one of the main issues for this one, for some projects to fail. So trusting a governing body, water suppliers also needs to be trusted, and monitoring agencies. So it also depends on the history of the safety history of these institutions here, the governing body, the water suppliers, and agencies. So if they have, for example, let's say Sydney Water. If Sydney Water has a long history of positive safety history, then most likely the people will also have more confidence in the water body. This is what happened in Western Australia. So people have the confidence of their agency or their water supplier, and so they have more projects with regards to water reuse as well. And the levels of service and responsiveness also of this institution will dictate how people will trust them or have more confidence with them. So according to a survey here, the two most trusted institutions are the university research teams. I think this is expected because people thought that they are the people who are doing the research and the basic research and also the applied research. So they know exactly the mechanism, how it works, and it has been tested a number of times as well. And the same way, CSIRO is a government research institute and is also involved heavily on research. So these are two of the institutions that are quite trusted by the public. So this is a saying that trust me, I am a scientist. I think that's a good saying for most of cases. But there's another thing here that to say trust me, I'm a politician. And I think based on a survey, in fact, politicians are the least trusted people by the public because most politicians try to promise a lot of things, but maybe not really doing all of those promises. And also, they have their own agenda. So this is another thing for public. They don't trust too much about politicians, especially if it's the government that is proposing the project. So this is basically what happened also in Toowoomba, as an example, in Queensland, as I mentioned before. So in a study, the introduction of reclaimed water will be more successful if the motives are transparent. So it has to be transparent from the start. They have to know what is the reason behind of proposing such project, for example. Because sometimes if it is coming from politician, sometimes people may think that maybe these people here that are proposing may have some political advancements or maybe they have some financial gains to the people who are going to install or manufacture or build the industry. So this is something that has to be done. The transparency is important, and also, as I mentioned, the trust can be built based on stakeholder engagement. You need to talk with people. You need to listen to their concerns. You need to identify those people that are quite interested to the project or quite influential to the project and deal with them, address them properly, communicate to them with constantly, and be open also. So that's why stakeholder engagement or community engagement is very important to gain the trust of the public. And so we will be discussing that one more in the next lectures. The attitudes of the people towards the environment is another crucial factor towards the community acceptance. Basically, this is more of a matter of individual choice. So we say attitudes to the environment. This refers to people who have concerns to the environment. If they are practicing conservation strategies already, and they are more aware of the environmental sustainability aspects of reusing or use of recycled water, then they're more likely to be more acceptable to the use of this recycled water or reused water, compared to people who have no idea or are not practicing at all on conservation of the planet or the conservation of the environment. And it also depends on the education level. So the more they are educated about the effects of our choices, the effects of the different technologies that we use, and also how it affects the environment, then they will also consider this one in their decision to support or not to support the wastewater treatment process or the project. And if they are strongly environmentalists, they're more likely to be more supportive because the reuse or water is more of an overall view of sustainability. So this one would be a better accepting way. And most probably though, they are still more to support non-potable uses rather than for potable uses. So the way they see or their role as an individual into the environmental sustainability will also affect the way they accept or not accept the use of reused or recycled water. This one is one of the most important factor as well, the cost of the recycled water. The effect of this depends on the socioeconomic status of a community as well as on the economic climate of the present situation, of that situation there. So when we say socioeconomic status, it depends on how much they can possibly afford. If we are talking about a low income economy, a low income family to a middle income family, then possibly this could be a problem because it really depends on how much the cost is. And besides, the economic climate, if it is in recession, for example, then most people may not be able to afford this cost of recycle, or may choose to buy a different source of water if they have similar pricing or cost. And but in this case, also people expect to pay less for this recycled or reclaimed water because of the perception that it has lower quality, which is not true at all. So the quality is at par or even better than the quality of the standard of some standards. For example, the Australian drinking standard, water standard. And this cost will also generate some public opposition because people may think that the having this wastewater treatment plant is just a waste of money. If it this again refers back to the issue of choice. If there are alternative water sources, why not use them? So if there's no other choice, possibly people may consider this recycled water more. And the issue of trust also comes in because they are talking about money now. So maybe people think that having this treatment plant will be just an excuse to tax the community more. So they are now questioning the motive of the government, for example, of having this water treatment plant. So there should be they feel that there's a financial motives of this one. In comparison, in not in comparison, but another issue is not about wastewater treatment, but on desalination as well. It's basically a similar issue comes in about why do we need desalination plant? Because we could possibly use that amount of money of construction or maintaining that desalination plant to other projects or other like maybe for helping poor people, for example. So this is a kind of perception from the public that they are funneling resources away from other necessary purposes like healthcare or education. So the cost for maintaining or construction desalination may be used for healthcare or education instead. So they are not seeing the need, the need at that point in time. So that's why more questions are rising. So the cost is one of the main factors of here for the acceptance of any water or wastewater treatment processes. And the last factor would be on socio-demographic factors. So these socio-demographic factors basically refers to the characteristics of composition of a population. It's about how many male or between male and female or between people of different age groups, for example, or people from different race as well, people with different religion, maybe indigenous people as well is an important aspect to consider when you are dealing with some new projects, for example. And so one study found that There are individuals above 50 years old are more resistant to accepting these water reuse schemes, perhaps because of their own history and experience as well in previous cases, or maybe they don't have that much information and knowledge about the treatment processes compared to age groups that are in the university or younger ones who are more exposed to the technology or to the information. And also there's also a gap on the gender, the education, and the cultural background where you're coming from. So if, for example, if you are a student coming from Africa, and in Africa you have an experience already of having to drink water from sewage, so because there are treatment plants, for example, in Namibia, so something like that, an experience something like that would affect the way you also decide. So if you come here and you live here in Australia and you have that experience beforehand, then most likely, if it's a positive experience, then you will probably become more accepting about this this situation here. And also the religion will also come into play depending on how you look at water, how you look at wastewater as well. The language will also be a significant barrier during stakeholder engagement. For example, if you don't understand anything about what the information about the given information, of course you will not be able to decide properly, and most likely the people with language problems may not be very supportive as well. And one aspect that I need to emphasize here is about indigenous people. And with this, we every time there's a project like this, we need to engage the indigenous people properly as well, because they have their own beliefs, just like other religion and other race. They have their own beliefs of their own lands. For example, if you are going to propose to build a wastewater treatment plant in a land that they see it as a holy land for them, that's gonna be a big factor of not accepting the proposal. So things like this has to be considered, especially during stakeholder engagement. So those are the various factors to consider for the acceptance of the public in water reuse projects, for example. And to summarize these things, these are the what we have learned so far, that the public acceptance to water reuse seems to be higher when there is a minimal degree of human contact. As I mentioned before, the perception of risk also is related to this, the disgust factor. If it's not used for human consumption, that would be a higher chance of acceptance. And then we have the protection of public health is clear, and want to make sure that the quality of the water is safe, is ensured to be safe, and is meeting the different standards for, or is actually similar standard of what is used to be of the normal water that is used by the public, then that would help improve the acceptance level. There is a clear benefit of the reuse to protect the environment, so this must be clear as well. People would like to see something that is green, in green way of living. Sustainability is a key word now. So something that is sustainable would be a good message and a good presentation to the people for better acceptance. There's a promotion is a related one, is a promotion of water conservation is a clear benefit as well. The cost of treatment is reasonable. It doesn't mean that it should be very, very cheap for a reused water because it's coming from wastewater, but should not be. But it's expected that it's be a little bit lower compared to desalination, of course. It depends on the treatment processes and the cost involved in the treatment process as well. But cost is an important aspect for consideration. It must be reasonable. And the perception of wastewater as a source of reclaimed water is minimal. So this is related to branding. So it's basically if you can just make sure that you are not triggering anything that would make the people think that it's coming from wastewater, then that you will have a better success if you are not doing that triggering. So it has to be a good branding for the naming of that waste of that reused water. There is an awareness of water supply problems in the community is high. So basically, if there's a good information about the situation of your water supply, or even a modeling of the future water supply as well, what will happen in the next few years, I think this would probably help in engaging them and making sure that they exactly understand why there's a need of using, or why there's a need of the water reuse scheme at this moment. So with that, you can have a better chance of acceptance. The role of reclaimed water in overwater supply scheme is clear. It is being advertised, or it is being presented in a way that in the sustainable future of your water supply, there's a specific role for the reclaimed water or the reused water. So this is about information dissemination as well. And then the perception of the quality of reclaimed water is high. So it's basically the same as protection of public health. So maintaining the this assurance from people, from the researchers, for example, from the governing body, that the quality is pretty much at a high level. And the last one would be on the confidence in local management of public utilities and technologies is high. So making sure that there is a good history of safety and good history of positive outcome from the authorities, like from the water bodies, for example, or from the government. So this will ensure of overall acceptance of your reclamation project or reuse or water reuse scheme. So these are our summary and the different factors we have mentioned and we have discussed so far. And so the next step would be, after knowing these factors, the next step would be on how to know exactly how to engage the community and use this information that we have learned here to engage them and try to convince them of some water reuse projects, for example, and the proper way to the engagement, the community engagement strategies, the different stakeholder analysis, as well as on the use of SWOT analysis, we will all discuss in the next lecture.